Okay, now I'll officially welcome you again. Anyway, thanks for coming to Think Again, Faith Again. We appreciate you being here. We're very grateful for Jana Spangler for hosting us. She's kind of ideal to do this particular topic in hosting, and feel free to chime in, Jana, but she does help lots of people through her practice with managing relationships in terms of faith and such. So if you're finding that you need to have a need for that, that is your gal. Thank you, Curt and Brent, for being here, being willing to do this. This is going to be lovely. Now, there's one person I was hoping was going to be on here, Brent, and maybe he's still come, but if you remember someone you used to home teach with in the Avenues, Dave Martin.
That name's familiar.
Yeah. Well, it'd be easier for him to remember you. You were, more of a someone to remember than, but he's a friend of mine. We used to both live in the Avenues, but
nice.
He might still pop on, but he has fond memories of you.
Yeah, that's a ward that I know well. There were 2 wards I was in up there, and so I know both of them, and still have really fond relationships with several of the people there. And yeah, in fact, sometimes I'm hanging out with them at my sister's place because she was in one of the wards with me. She lives up at North Point, up on the upper avenues. And, so sometimes ward members come over, get to see them all again. I didn't have white hair back then, but yeah, they're great people up there.
They are. That's where we started our family. First ward in the Avenues.
Oh, nice.
So, Joe, I have not prepared well. I've been out of town and got here about an hour before this started. Would you mind offering an opening prayer? Would you be okay with that?
I know how to do that.
Well, just make it up then. Just make it up as you go.
Oh, I said I know how to do that.
Oh, I thought you said you didn't know how to do that. Thanks.
Almighty God, we are thankful to gather together electronically, virtually, thankful for technology, and thankful for these 2 brothers who have consented to lead a discussion. We pray for thy Spirit to be with us and to enliven our minds and expand our hearts. It's good to be together. We say this in the name of our friend and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I have a friend in Jesus. I love that, how you put friend in there.
I like that too.
Yeah. Brett, you okay with that?
Absolutely. Hey, I'm officiating at my niece's wedding.
Yeah.
That's coming up, and it's really interesting because it's just a few days from now. I'm going to be flying out to Utah because she and her partner are actually quite devout believers in the Latter-day Saint Church, and they are also being married in a same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
And they've been fully embraced by the ward that they're in. Nice. In fact, they even called them to callings, knowing that they were in a same-sex relationship. Because they called them and they were just like, wait a second, are you sure this is okay? Right? And the ward members were like, why wouldn't it be? You're a part of our community and family as much as anybody else. And like I said, they're actually devout believers in the LDS Church, except for that thing. And that's the one thing where that just doesn't work for them. But they believe in most of the basic tenets, if not all, of Mormonism. And they embrace it, enthusiastically. And so, yeah, I'll be officiating at their at their wedding. And it's actually got a lot of, how can I put it, Mormonese in it, right? Because they are devout believers.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to take that away from them. This is their day. You know, it's not about me or what my beliefs are. It's about them and what they believe.
I love
And
that.
so, yeah.
That's nice. Okay, I'm going to start asking you the questions that I sent to you a while back. Brent, I'm going to start with you first. So besides sharing a common passion for LDS church history and Mormon culture, what else has helped create this long-lasting friendship that you two have?
Friendship. I don't know how else to describe it. Curt and I were actually talking about this. Like, we were saying to each other, so why are we still friends, right? And it's because we never really thought of the alternative as being an option, that we wouldn't be friends, because we were friends to begin with, and everybody's beliefs change over time. Whether you're talking politics or no matter what, they change over time. And if you can't deal with that in a friendship relationship, you're never going to have a friendship that lasts very long. It's just not going to happen. And so that's the bottom line, is the recognition that our life's paths are a journey and not a destination. And you don't look at it and say, this person's never going to change their belief on something. This is who they are, deal's done, throw them under the bus, right? It's the realization that life is a journey and not a destination. And I think that to a certain degree, Curt and I share that, even though we've gone down different paths. I think we still inherently share that belief that we don't judge either by a destination of where we've arrived.
I like that. Thank you, Brent. Curt, anything to add to that?
Well, until now, I didn't know I had a choice. Yeah, it's like Brent said, it never even occurred to me that we wouldn't be friends. We've been friends literally for decades. We've been through the mill together. I mean, more than one mill. And we share way more than we differ on. You know, we just, when you know somebody for that long and as well as we do, except for when he wouldn't buy my lunch, I couldn't think of a reason why I wouldn't want him to be my friend. But yeah, we share way more than we don't. And we've just always been friends, no matter what the discussion or even the argument. It's just hasn't mattered. So
right.
That's beautiful. So do you think your relationship did the Mark Hoffman thing affect that at all? Did it deepen it, or did it, both of you having that experience with Hoffman?
I think if I could just add this, Curt, if you don't mind me just saying this, that I think it broadened and deepened our appreciation for certain aspects of our friendship. And because basically with Hoffmann, it's like, you know, I said in another interview with Sunstone, when the folks were here doing the Mormon murders documentary, I was asked specifically, you know, do you forgive Mark Hoffmann? And my response was, there's no one to forgive, because the Mark Hoffmann I knew never existed. Right? But what I felt with Curt has always been genuine. It's never been on either of our part. We have been, you know, worn our hearts on our sleeves. And I think because of that, that has carried us through in ways that other things wouldn't, because an event like that could absolutely destroy friendships.
Yeah.
I have no doubt of that. But that's not what my relationship has been with Curt.
Sure. Thank you.
And we're fellow PTSD survivors together.
Yeah, for
And
real.
there's a bond there that is hard for other people to understand. I mean, people are fascinated by the Mark Hoffman story, and I mean, they're horrified by it, but they're fascinated and they want to know about it. But neither Brent nor I nor any of the others involved could ever begin to convey what that was like.
Exactly.
But we each know from personal experience, together and apart, what it was like and what it's been like since. And I think that's a huge bond that's really difficult to explain.
Yeah,
I think so.
agreed.
Thank you. So just going to explore a few things in relationship to where you both come from philosophically. So Curt, how has diving deep into LDS church history, has it ever caused you some serious doubts about the fundamental truth claims?
Well, I don't know how you can possibly study history and not run up against difficult questions, difficult issues, confusion, doubt. I don't think it's possible. If, like you say, if you dive deep, then those things are going to occur naturally. But it's part of life. It's part of searching for whatever's important to you, whether it be in religion or relationships or just life in general. I don't think it's possible for us to go through life without doubt, and nor would I want to try. And I don't know if you're going to mention it at some point, but I did an essay in this new book, Why I Stay, Volume 2, where I talk specifically about doubt. And there's some great quotes, like Frederick Buechner, who said, if there's no room for doubt, there's no room for me. Elder Uchtdorf had some great things to say about questions and doubts. I won't take the time to read them, but they're easily available. There's just no getting through this life without it, and it has to be faced, and we all do it in our own way, I suppose. But I've chosen a path different from others, and I've chosen to stay, but as I say in the essay, with my eyes wide open. Even though I see life through a Mormon lens, I don't wear rose-colored glasses, and I think my eyes are wide open. And Brent will attest to that. We've agreed on a lot of things, but we've also debated things too, and that's just the nature of it. I love it. I welcome it.
That's beautiful. So did the Mormon forgeries that Mark Hoffman did, maybe the Salamander letter or any of the others, before you knew that they were forgeries, did that throw you for a loop at all? Or
well, I don't know who it didn't throw for a loop.
I mean, in terms of your faith,
Yeah, no, not really, because by then I'd had enough experience with difficult questions and inquiries and searching that those just added to the list, really. And as I watched historians and other people that I really respected wrestle with those things, I think I wrestled along with them, but it never caused me to abandon my fundamental faith, because I was already very much aware of difficulties in our history and even in our theology, and I come to expect that.
So you're probably of such an age that I don't remember when I was told that Joseph Smith was a polygamist. So somewhere way back when I was, must have been
Wait,
younger.
what?
Sorry.
Thanks a lot.
That's exactly though. So when I don't know, it was maybe 7 years ago when Early Faith Again Jim McConkey, our friend, was doing. It wasn't on polygamy, but somehow it got around to polygamy. And he had mentioned that Joseph Smith, had this many wives. And there was this cute young mother, looked like early 30s. She said, she raised her hand just with a horrified look. So you just blew my boat out of the water. I have never heard this. I went through seminary and institute and all these things. So I think some of it's generational, because I don't remember when I first heard it, but I don't remember being shocked by it, which is kind of sad because I'm shocked by it now.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe somebody could explain to me why it's okay for Brigham Young to start polygamy, but not Joseph Smith. I've never quite gotten that. We all, oh yeah, I grew up thinking it was Brigham Young as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just doesn't make much sense that Joseph Smith would have not had anything to do with it. And I've never quite gotten that approach.
Yeah, I haven't either. That's so what about you, Brent? How was it, what caused you to shift in your belief system? Was it church history things that you read, or was it things outside science, or what?
Right. Actually,
and I should say, just in case people don't know, hopefully you read the materials and the biographies. I mean, Brent went on a mission. He's had experiences with general authorities and all kinds of stuff. So go ahead, Brent.
Yeah. I grew up in a very LDS household because, from my mission on until the 1990s, my dad was managing director of LDS Temples, which is basically the equivalent of the chief operating officer for LDS Temples. And so when I went through what I would call not so much a crisis of faith as a failure of faith that I experienced in the mid 80s, it actually was already in the works before the Hoffmann documents ever came along. Because as far as history goes, my perspective on history and belief allowed me to have a very broad belief system. So, for example, I could believe that most of Joseph Smith's translations weren't even ancient historical documents, but that they were actually the byproduct of Joseph Smith's experiences with God. And that's what I was prepared to, that's how far I was prepared to go in my belief, because I believed in the church and I believed in the inspiration of prophets and so on. But I also had my eyes wide open. And for me, the Salamander letter didn't teach me as much new as it may have to other people. Well, especially since Hoffmann may have got some of his ideas from me in prior conversations before he even created, the Salamander letter.
Was that a confession, Brent?
No, I'm not saying that. But I came across a letter that I wrote to David Berger, who wrote a number of very important, pivotal articles on LDS doctrine. For example, he wrote one on the Adam God theory for dialogue, as well as one on the second anointing for dialogue. And I remember writing a letter to him in 1984, in which he had asked me, so what are the pivotal critical issues coming up in Mormonism? And I went through and listed them out. And they're exactly what the Joseph Smith papers is starting to acknowledge now. I went through and listed out, why does it seem that Joseph Smith's translation of the Book of Mormon is an extension of his money digging activity and the mechanics of how he did it? Why is there no mention of Melchizedek priesthood prior to 1831? And on and on. I mean, I just listed these items out, and now these are the very issues that the Joseph Smith Papers Project is they're grappling with. and they're very complex issues. And so for me, it wasn't the history. For me, it was a fundamental belief in God and the idea that God was interacting in our world in a way that was meaningful. And I had a couple of experiences that were extremely profound. And I remember I had what is the equivalent, without going into all the backstory because it's huge. I had the equivalent of almost what people have described to me as a born again experience, but kind of in the opposite direction. And I remember exactly where I was. I was driving in front of the Cathedral of the Madeleine in Salt Lake City. And I finally said to myself in my head for the first time, there is no God and there is no one outside of us other than each other that will ever get us through life. And I just felt like this tremendous burden had been lifted off my shoulders, right? It's literally what people I've heard people describe as a born again experience. And I don't think that most, and I'm not attributing some supernatural, because obviously I can't in this context, but I'm not attributing anything supernatural to it. I just felt like finally there was psychological relief, that everything I had been grappling with and struggling with in my head had finally come to to a head, no pun intended. And, basically it was at that point that was life changing for me. But as a result of that, I felt this newborn attitude toward my fellow men, as ironic as this may seem, that it was more like loving, accepting, embracing, inclusive, all of these things, because I realized we're all we have. And so that's where I came to. And the fact is that I have family members, a ton of them, who are devout believers in the Latter-day Saint Church, and I respect that. I respect Curt for his beliefs. It's just that my path took me in a different direction. I don't know why. I can't explain it. But I also had to be honest with myself in order to make sense of the world that I live in. So anyway, sorry for going on for so long.
No, that's lovely.
I'm just anxious to tell everybody you've been born again.
I don't think there's any such thing as a born again agnostic, though.
Well, I don't know. There is now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you kind of addressed my follow-up question already, and that was, in the documentary, it talks about, you and Mark talked about your atheism and how you were kind of going that direction or feeling that way, both of you. And I was just curious if Mark had any influence, do you feel like, on you? I have the impression you had more influence on him maybe that way, but
no, he had no influence on me. Where I was going with things, it had nothing to do with him. It had nothing to do with his documents, and much to the chagrin of others who would like to pin it on that, it had nothing to do with any of that. It was a years long struggle, including years before I ever met Mark Hoffmann, and trying to make sense of the world that I live in. And so no, and that's why I can't say, oh, this was the historical thing I discovered that made me decide, it's all a bunch of crap. Because I was willing to go to such lengths to retain belief. And so, no, there wasn't a thing that I can pinpoint and say that's it.
Oh. So the other question I had for you, I think you were already pretty well, or maybe your dog well now, but um,
Oh my gosh.
I was going to say, do you think you are a better human and, I don't know, secularist, because we're not, for following the passion of church history, and how has that blessed your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for one thing, it's like I've tried to explain to people, because people will say to me, why on earth do you keep studying church history after you decided that you're no longer a believer in the traditional sense or anything else? And it's because it's a microcosm of the human experience. I look at it and say, we are looking in a nutshell at the formation of a new religious tradition. We rarely have this experience. We go back to New Testament times, you're not going to find the documents like we have associated with Joseph Smith, right? We have nothing from Jesus himself. And so here we are in this environment where we can look at this and watch at the evolution of this new religious tradition, because I think that that evolution actually reflects more closely what each of our paths are than we may think, including all the flaws we may have and everything else that we bring to the table. We aren't perfect, not in any way, shape, or form. They weren't either, but they were trying to find their way. And whether you call Joseph Smith a fraud or not, I couldn't care less. The point is that you are watching the evolution of a new religious tradition. And to me, that's fascinating. And it's like, in fact, I think I've told this to Curt before, that when people ask me, why are you still involved in this? I'll say to them, if you have never understood what it's like to look at a historical document that's been known for a long time and see it with new eyes and find something that no one else has seen before, and that excitement and enthusiasm it engenders, you'll never understand why I do this.
Now, Brent, just admit it. You can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone.
That's what I was going to say next.
That's beautiful. Curt, what brought on your passion for church history, and how do you feel like it's blessed your life and shaped you,
Well,
and maybe helps you be a better Latter-day Saint and Christian?
you know, I've my entire life, this won't surprise anybody who knows me, I've loved reading, I've loved history, all kinds of history. So it was only natural to want to know more about Latter-day Saint history. And I've been studying it my whole life, really, my whole adult life anyway, and have just been fascinated by it because it's about real human beings and their struggles. And I can relate to that. And I just think there's so much to learn. I know it sounds trite, but you know, I don't think you can understand who you are today without understanding who we were before. And I just think that's so key. And I think it's helped me to be a better individual in all ways, because religiously or otherwise, because it's given me insight into the human condition and how people react under different conditions and circumstances, and whether it's in a faith situation or not. I think people tend to be people, and I think I am better for having studied history. I wish more people would. I think we'd have a lot less problems today, and a lot less ignorance, and a lot less bias and prejudice if people just understood more about history and what's happened and how it happened. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, that does. Thank you. You know, it's been my observation that, I mean, we talk about history as if it's some unified perspective, but to read widely history is pretty critical, because, I mean, if you just read one person's perspective, that's just their that's just there, and we have the experience and know, even in our personal lives, that we have our perceptions about how we see things and how we experience something, but then a spouse or a friend or one of our kids gives us, maybe even a more real story about, our own history, right? Because they see it from a whole different vantage point.
Yeah.
So having that collection, like maybe it was Brent that you brought up the Joseph Smith papers. I think that's really valuable, just to reach out and try to grab every possible thing, right, out there.
And to see life through other eyes than our own.
Yeah.
As best we can.
Yeah. Thank you. That's good. Okay. So, Curt.
Yes, sir.
Are you worried about Brent's salvation?
Oh, every day.
And I'm worried about his as well. So
I told him a long time ago that I promised no matter what, I'd come down to visit him after we're gone.
He described it more as like haunting me in my dreams, but that's.
I don't care what kingdom he ends up in. I'm going to visit him.
Nice. I'll be driving my Rolls Royce up there from outer darkness to see you too, Curt.
No, I mean, am I seriously worried about his status? No, because Brent has found his place in life and he's happy with where he is. I mean, well, I don't know if we're all ever totally satisfied with where we are, but he's comfortable in his own skin, and as am I. And I'm just great with that. I'm going to leave any judgment to beings who are far greater than myself.
Thank you. What about his wife and children and being all together in the next life, as we believe?
Is this to me?
That's to you still. I mean, I know Brent doesn't worry about it, so this is to you.
Well, Brent's really the only one I'm worried about. No, I don't even know how to comment on that. My kids, none of them are really what you'd call active in the church, and some are very much the opposite. But my main concern, and I would say the same about Brent, as long as they're happy, I'm happy. I want them to find fulfillment and happiness and joy. And I think that's as much as I can expect for anyone and hope for.
Amen, brother. As you know, my kids, haven't been involved in the church for some time. And that's when I kind of really had to grapple with that. And then, for those who are listening, who are in mixed faith friendships or relationships, not stressing about, just letting go of that whole worry about what's going to happen in the next life to people you care about is kind of like that alleluia moment that Brent talked about, going, there's a burden off your shoulders. God loves them more than we do, assuming there's a God, and does a lot better job of taking care of those kind of things. And if we just attend to loving them now, right, then I think we're okay. Jana, do you have any thoughts on that? Because that's your specialty of, gotta unmute yourself. There you go.
I mean, one thing that strikes me, and it may seem like it's a trite little thing, but I love the humor that goes on in this friendship that we're witnessing. I think that it's actually a very underrated skill and gift that can help ease up things that can otherwise be tense. Like I actually just love the way that these guys joke with one another over these things. It just helps us all recognize we don't have to take it all so seriously, right?
Right. Relax a little bit.
There are plenty of others that will take it seriously for us.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I know within families, that's a little more fraught. I mean, the theology can tend to take us to places where, sad heaven, we're going to be alone without our families, or, but I just think having the humility that we don't really know everything we maybe even think we know. And just having the
Especially those
humility.
things.
Yeah, right. Just
Mhm.
having the humility to sit back and take in another person, just everything he said, like just really see another person, just get to know another person. There's so much more to life than, just
In the next
worry
life.
about.
So much
Absolutely.
more to
Like,
life now than the next life.
we know we've got this for sure, 100%. Like, can we enjoy that? You don't want to sell out this life here for something that we may have faith in but don't fully know. So.
Well, I worry a little bit about those who worry far more about the next life than they do this one.
That's
I
true.
think that's why we have a lot of the problems we have.
Amen, Curt.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Yeah.
Curt, did you read the biography that I wrote up for the page?
For this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you read the last line?
Well, okay, now you're really testing my memory.
Okay.
Tell me again.
It's very important because it said that despite our occasional disagreements, there is one fundamental moral core value that we agree on, and that's that I'm funnier than you are.
Oh, I
And
missed that.
yeah, and
Missed
so
that.
please everyone remember that.
I
That brings
humbly
us
bow
together.
before your greater abilities and powers.
Too true.
Oh, I love
Oh boy.
I love how you guys are just demonstrating this whole thing about just enjoy and love one another as they are, right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're not trying to change each other. You just
No.
appreciate each other's gifts.
Well, I would if I thought I could, but I know I can't. So.
Same.
It's pointless.
So I'll ask this question of each of you. Brent, what is it that you respect and appreciate most about Curt? And is that appreciation and respect, has that been difficult at all, even knowing that you're very different in some very fundamental questions of life?
Don't answer that.
Oh, I'm going to. It's too late. The question has been asked. Here it comes. My greatest appreciation with Curt is that, aside from being, curious and all those other things that I enjoy about people, that he is accepting and inclusive and not judgmental. He has the ability to take a step back and say, I view things differently than this person does, and that's okay. Because I've not always been the same either, right? And that's one thing that's hard for some folks to realize at times, that I've rarely met a person who's in their 60s or whatever, right?
And I will be soon.
Who has exactly the same beliefs that they had when they were 21. And so it's kind of like the realization and the acceptance that we're not always going to believe exactly what we believed at every point along this space-time continuum. And that's, I appreciate that immensely about Curt.
Thank you.
Curt, can you think of something? Anything?
Well, I've been thinking for weeks. I've been trying to come up with something. Anything. Anything.
One thing.
I will tell you this. I hesitate to say this because I don't want to swell his head even more than it already is.
Or more than biceps, right?
Yeah, well, that's true.
Right.
I am in awe of Brent's intellect. And he has forgotten more about certain subjects than I'll probably ever learn. And he is one of the most thoughtful, and I'm not talking about considerate so much, although he's that, but he thinks, he thinks, and he examines, and he dissects in a way that I rarely see. I mean, he really has this ability, and I am seriously, I'm in awe of his knowledge, and he doesn't lord it over you and, you know, make you feel like you're a mental inferior, although I'm sure he feels that about me, but at least he never says it. But Brent is a walking example of someone who appreciates the life of the mind. And I don't say that to the exclusion of spiritual things, because I think you can be spiritual without being religious. And I believe what Brent said earlier, that he knows there are greater things than us. And however he chooses to view those things it's really irrelevant to me. I just appreciate that he does, and that he realizes that even with his great intellect, that there are things more powerful and bigger than him. Although if you see him in person, it's hard to believe. But I admire Brent for a lot of qualities that he has. That's what comes to mind right off. But he's a true scholar, and he's a true gentleman. He's a gentleman and a scholar. I'll say that.
Thank you, Curt. That's very kind.
Now that I might have gotten your wording a little differently than the way you wrote it, Brent, but I tried not to look like it was memorized.
Yeah, I've already transferred the money via PayPal. So we're all good.
My offshore account.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I mean it, and he knows it.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Well, you know, one of the things that I admire about you both, and again, I only know Brett mainly through 6-hour plus podcast through Mormon Stories in 2014 from John DeLynn, but I was so impressed, you know, and even touched that someone as you said, intelligent as Brent is, his heart, his good heart and thoughtfulness of relationships and things that really matter, I think, which isn't just knowing things. He's got that down, you know, and I could really feel that and sense that in you, Brent, from that podcast, and even just our brief discussion prior to this tonight, and in our discussion tonight. And that's such a gift, and you both have that, Curt. I know you better, and you've always exhibited
Thank you.
that quality, and that matters so much, I think, particularly in our times now, where because of information overload and so many sources of information from, you know, not always reliable sources, we all think we know more than we do. I think so. That having that humility and caring about relationships more than what we think we know and what we think we believe. I think as a believer, that's what God cares about. And you know, with Jane and my atheist sons, and Jane left the church, and she's, you know, sometimes not so sure. Sometimes I'm not so sure, you know, about God. If there is a God. I believe there is. I have a lot of faith and hope there is, and had experiences that tell me there is. But at the end of the day, what matters to me, and Jesus is who I've chosen to, you know, to be my mentor, basically. And whether, you know, Jesus is divine or not, I don't know that for sure. I believe Jesus is. But just if I follow those basic 2 commandments, you know, if that's all I can focus on, that takes about everything out of me, just to try to do, you know, those 2 things. If I can do those well, I don't need to worry about anything else. You know, I think we're okay.
Well, if you are worried, Jay, I promise I'll come and visit you too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I've got a long list started.
And I want Brent and his Rolls Royce from the purgatory to come up and
there we go.
maybe take me for a ride.
It may be Bugatti or something like that, but yeah, same difference.
So both of you, knowing historically, both that religious impulses and atheistic impulses have caused a great deal of suffering in the world, how do you explain your support for either kind of viewpoint? You know, my sons will tell you, as Richard Dawkins well, religion is like one of the worst things that ever happened in the evolution of mankind. And yet, in my own experience, I've also seen a lot of good from religion, and then I've seen some terrible things also happen on the atheist side. You know, whether it's Stalin or Chairman Mao or things like that. So, how do you grapple with that? Because my kids will sometimes, one of them in particular, would get irritated with me that I still attend and believe in the LDS faith when he feels it's damaged him. And caused him a lot of pain and heartache, and wished he hadn't been raised that way. And I obviously wish I had done things different as a parent and done a better job. I mean, I tried the best I could, but I didn't know everything I know now. And so, anyway, how do you grapple with that? And have you two grappled with that too?
Go ahead, Brent.
So from my perspective, first off, I would describe myself really as a secular humanist. And part of the reason for that is because of all the baggage, political and otherwise, that the term atheism comes with. And to a lesser degree, but also to a degree, even agnostic nowadays, right? And so my view is that, evil can be in the heart of any man, whether they're religious, whether they're, they are atheistic, it doesn't matter. It can reside in the hearts of different people and humans. And it can be awful when it does. And what they can do, the ruthlessness and the callousness with which, people can be treated. So I don't make a division. I put them all in the same category. They're not good human beings, right? I don't care whether they believe in God, don't believe in God, that doesn't matter. They're just horrible, terrible human beings. They are not adding anything constructive to society, to history, and certainly not to the people who are affected by them. So that's kind of my feeling, is that I don't judge it in terms of what your belief system is, but rather where your heart is at and what you're willing to do to accomplish your ends. So that's kind of my take.
Thank you, Brent. Curt?
Well, Christopher Hitchens wrote a book called God Is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. It's a pretty brutal title.
Mm-hmm.
My fallback position is that so many of the bad things that happen in the world are because people don't live their religion rather than because they have religion in their lives. I know that's not universally true, and maybe we could have a pretty stiff argument about that, but I think most people who are religious want to do good, and they do good the way they see it, but I think they can be just as misguided as anybody. But I like to think that we just fall short of being the way we know we're supposed to be or should be to make this a better world, rather than we're so flawed because we have religion. I think religion can be used for good or ill, and it has been and always will be. And I think we even do it in our church. We can do terrible things, or we can do great things, and we could do them without the religion as well. So then I guess the argument is, do you really need it? But I really think that I just think we fall short of the ideals that we're taught.
I think that's,
And if I could just add that to that point, Curt, is that I think often within, how can I put it, within any community, whether it's a political grouping, right? What we are seeing at CPAC this weekend, right? And I'm not going to make a judgment about what they're saying there, but if you look at them, they're isolationists. If you look at certain religious congregations, when they become isolationists and forget the sense of community around them, and that there are others that are part of the bigger picture, that's when I think they start having the biggest problems. And you could even distill it down to that, it's the concept of power and the struggle for power, always. And I think that there's some truth to be had in that people don't just wantonly go out and randomly do things in many instances. Not saying never. Some people are absolutely insane. But I'm talking about when you're talking about large groups of people acting out certain ways, you can always see this power dynamic going on behind it, whatever that dynamic may be. And so that's why I said that I don't divide those things along religion or a religion, right? It can be anywhere in between, anywhere on the belief spectrum that you can find. If there becomes a power hoarding, so to speak, then that's when you start seeing these problems arise. And we've seen it in the LDS faith, we've seen it in Catholicism, we've seen it among evangelicals, we see it everywhere, including non-believers. They're right there with them, right? Doing the same thing. And it's when people lose this sense of community and inclusion that I think they start pushing people away. That's the cancel culture. If you know what I want to say, the cancel culture is that's it. When you start becoming less inclusive, all you're doing is you're shoving people out of your circle. That's all you're doing. And that creates incredible imbalance of power in communities. At least that's my take.
An extreme example of what you're talking about there would be Jim Jones and Jonestown, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed. David Koresh, I mean, the list can go on and on, right?
Yeah.
When people identify that they have power, they become isolationists, they start excluding others from the group. We can see it in politics. We can see it, in everyday life, in your employment environment, and so on. And I think that is really what results in the downfall and what creates the problems. It's not a belief system per se. It's people who try to take that belief system and turn it into a power play.
thank you. Again, as I mentioned, Jesus Christ is the one that resonates most with me. Brent, how do you view just the kind of core teachings of those? Do you think, and in my mind, what he says addresses that power thing? Do you feel that that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, without getting into all the technical stuff about historical
Right.
readings of texts and so on, I think that there are certainly attributes that are attributed to this prophet of Nazareth that resonate. And you can find them in many religious texts. The golden rule is a classic example. You can find that in almost every religious text throughout the world.
Yes.
And I think that there are certain elements like that do matter. And do unto your neighbor as you would have them do unto you. I mean, how can somebody not say that cannot be something that has value, to actually instill inside yourself that that's how you're going to behave with other fellow humans? How can you not think that? And so, yeah, I don't center it on any particular faith,
Right.
but I center it on experience. And the fact is, the pragmatic element of it works, and it works constructively. And when we don't do that, all we do is hurt those that we care about most.
Oh.
And so that's my take anyway.
Well said. Curt, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, we don't really know exactly what Jesus said.
Right.
I mean, it's been filtered so many times, even early on and since. And I certainly believe that if we live according to the many of the teachings that we get through the New Testament and elsewhere, we'd all be better off, and this would be a better world. But I think that there's value from so many people from the past of this world that we can learn from. But he certainly is a great exemplar, and I don't think I could improve on anything that he, at least that is left for us as it's come down to us.
Yeah, I appreciate you both couching it that way, because I agree with you in how you're couching it. A lot of Christianity has stoicism in it, which I think is interesting. Some beautiful thoughts, and it seems like there's this thread of consciousness or ideas. Again, they're very simple and poignant, that whatever the culture or religious tradition or ideology, whatever it is, if we could center on those, that would be a wonderful thing. Let's see. Okay, we're almost done here. So kind of in closing, 2 questions for you both. Curt, what do you wish members of the church and other religions could know and feel about people like Brent? Let's say human secularists, or people that you love and that shift in their faith. Maybe even become antagonistic to religious traditions, assuming you're from that side of things.
What do I think that people of faith could learn from, Brent?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, and how do you wish members of the church, our faith, Latter-day Saint faith, would respond to people that do that? I mean, we have a lot of that. We've had a lot of it, particularly the last decade. A lot of people digging into church history deeply. A lot of people, struggling with LGBTQ issues, and a lot of people leaving.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the people who stay, I think they need tools and ways to manage that with their friends and family, so that these wonderful ideas that you both have expressed of inclusion rather than exclusion, that you actually, pull them in with greater love and acceptance rather than, you're not a part of us anymore.
Well, this doesn't start with me. Obviously others have said this, but I'm a big tent Mormon, and I think the bigger the tent, the better. And as far as I'm concerned, Brent and anyone who may think like him is in the tent, whether they want to be there or not. I'm happy to include them in the tent. And because and I've said this before, when anybody leaves the church, I don't worry as much about them necessarily as I do about how the church is diminished by what it's lost with the departure of many of the people who are going either by choice or not. I do believe that we are diminished and that we lose some of our essence, and our fellow, whether they're believers or not, they are kindred to us, they're family, and I hate to lose anybody. And I rebel at that idea that people should feel that they have to make a choice whether to stay or not, and sometimes it's not their choice at all. And I'm very sad over those who feel that they have no choice but to leave. So I think we can learn from Brent, because Brent he's in a position to judge if he wants to. Certainly he's had enough happen to him that he could make some pretty brutal judgments perhaps, but I don't see him doing that. No, that's not how he lives his life. And I think we should at least be as willing to try to have that attitude as he is. And so I don't
Christian as he is.
What's that? Say that again.
Be as much of a Christian as he has been to us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Brent, so how do you wish secular humanists, what do you wish secular humanists and ex-Mormons could know and feel about people like Curt?
That Christopher Hitchens wouldn't write books with the title that Curt just mentioned a bit earlier, because the bottom line is that to just say with one sweeping fell swoop that all religion is evil, it's like, come on, every group that you talk about, all Republicans are evil, all Democrats are evil, all libertarians are evil. It's like, come on. These are groups of individuals, each one with their own different ideas than the other. You can't make that sweeping judgment. And to come out and say that, religion poisons everything, it's like, you've got to be kidding me. I've got some family members who are devout LDS, who are some of the most decent, caring people I know. They would do anything to help a stranger, anything. And they have. I've watched them do it, as I've grown up with them. And it's just kind of like, we need to get out of this mode that we can simply categorize someone and then make a judgment about that category rather than about the individual. And that's where I see us going completely wrong. And we're seeing it horribly right now play out on the national stage with our politics. Every group is being categorized and then either labeled as good or bad. End of story. Nobody tries to understand the hearts of anyone who is under those categories, right? Because by definition, they're already bad. And that needs to change, in my opinion, more and more. And, if anything, what Curt has taught me about all of that is not to be like that. He exemplifies how not to be that person who's labeling everybody under a category and then saying, bad person. I cannot associate with you. You cannot be part of my circle anymore. It's like he said, his circle grows every time he meets someone with a new idea. It doesn't shrink. If you see somebody who has a healthy, good, and decent idea, bring them in. Don't exclude them. You know, that's my feeling anyway. I mean, I had an experience that I'll tell very, very quickly. I came to Utah on a trip a couple of years ago, and my daughter and son-in-law asked if I would take them on a tour of the Mormon History Library and the Mormon History Museum. Now, both of them very active LDS, had grown up, both of them very active LDS. And much to my shock, this was only a few years ago that this happened. Much to my shock, their reason in taking me to the historical museum and the historical library was to tell me that they were leaving the LDS church. And that the reason was because they had been researching all of the gospel topic essays and researching all the footnotes to them. And where they were coming from, and this is really interesting because I think that this is a clarion call to active LDS, that where they were coming from is that the reason why they wanted out wasn't necessarily because of the ideas that they were learning, but because they felt so betrayed. In fact, I remember when my son-in-law said to me, everything I taught on my mission was a lie. And I cannot believe that this has happened. He was so deeply upset. It just ripped at his very core because he had trusted them to tell the truth. And he just felt absolutely devastated. I never once encouraged them to hold a belief one way or the other. In fact, I specifically avoided talking about Mormon history with them for that very purpose, because I didn't want to be the person responsible for ever swaying what direction their journeys would go. And this was so unexpected. I was in shock by this, and to a certain degree, a little bit sad that they were going through this, and that they didn't feel that there was another way for them. The bishop and the ward, nice, great guy. No response. They basically got shut off from almost every ward member family that they knew.
Mm.
And it's like, what happened? What happened to this sense of community? What made it dissipate so quickly? Was someone finding out for the first time that the missionary lessons that they were teaching were not accurate? And you know, it breaks my heart in so many ways, not because I necessarily want them to believe or not believe, but that they would even have to go through that's heartbreaking to me. And to watch how it's affected their relationship with other active members. But I have to say, I am absolutely thrilled, especially because my son-in-law's family is so large, how accepting they have been. You know, they clearly don't understand it. They don't agree with them, but they've just said, we're not going to shut you off. That's not going to happen. You are family, and that's not going to change. And I love that.
And
For them.
this one that you're referring to at the very end, those are the ones you're coming to do the wedding for?
No, I'll actually, this is a niece that I'm coming to do the wedding for. Her and her partner, Jackie, are both active LDS, complete believers, and I'm performing their same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
And they attend, they hold, you know, positions in church. I hope that doesn't change.
Yeah.
Because if that does change for them, that will be devastating for them
Yeah.
because they truly believe. I mean, it's right in the wedding vows. I even asked questions about it, saying that, right here we have, that you're going to support, your wife in her belief in a Father in heaven and the Savior and so on. This is what I'm going to be saying, right? As part of the vows, because those are things that they believe.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to have anything happen to them as a result of this would be absolutely heart-wrenching for them.
Yeah.
I
Curt?
sure hope that doesn't happen.
In
Yeah.
fact, by the way, the night before the wedding, I'm going down there to attend my niece's son's baptism. So that's what's happening the night before, then the wedding. And so if anything were to happen to them, I would feel like it's an absolute tragedy. And I think that the ward that they're in would feel the same.
Thank you. Brent, I'm sure everybody senses this. You're a great example of what we want to see on the other side. I mean, as a secular humanist, you're very supportive of your family and friends who are active Latter-day Saints and their ordinances and whatever, is meaningful in their life. And I love that. Now, ideally, Latter-day Saints, and you gave a great example of that ward, and I've heard of other wards too, and I know personally some people that have experienced this, of doing that same thing, for people who feel like leaving the church is the best thing for them. Maybe even join another church or becoming a secular humanist or atheist, but just trying to support them and love them in their journey as they are. LGBTQ people, yeah, that's make a much better world. So let's see. So both of you guys got to answer that last question. Let me think here. Let me look.
Yep.
Yeah. So we got both sides of it. Okay. Thank you so much, you two. Now we've got a little bit of time left for any other questions or comments. Bryce, I think I saw something in the chat that I don't know if you wanted to share something, and then same with Robert Reynolds. Either one of you want to speak to the group of what you said in the chat? No?
Let's see, I didn't quite see it.
I could just say, no, I just really resonated with the story that Brent told. That was sort of my introduction to church history back in 2014 or 2015, feeling that same sense that you described with, I think it was your son. So grateful for groups like this that exist that help me, find some sort of path to stay connected.
Thank you. Wonderful. Robert?
I mean, mine was just a small comment in response to Bryce. I've heard this expressed by a lot of people of the sense of betrayal. I never personally have felt betrayal per se over learning things that I definitely did not learn in the church growing up or as a missionary. I don't know why I didn't, but I do wish I knew better where to target that frustration. I know Joseph Fielding Smith, of course, with the, Joseph Smith's journal and the safe and other things he did, and his personal justifications of his family lineage and reasons why he felt, we can kind of justify in some ways his reasoning for hiding things. I don't see an honest, fair justification. I'm just saying I've heard those excuses, but I don't know instances of other hiding, intentional hiding from the brethren well enough. And I kind of wish I did. My experiences with the brethren is, and I've had a few, I just recently met with Elder Uchtdorf. In fact, I've met with a few apostles a few times and asked a lot of tough questions. I think a lot of times the brethren don't know as much as you think they know. I would just love to know better, because I think a lot of us get frustrated, really frustrated by these things of like, why would you be this righteous man who spent your entire life, in church meetings in a suit trying to do good, and then you're out there hiding and doing things like that. I would just love to know more. If people know details of who and when to direct those kind of frustrations, I think it'd be interesting, and it'd be maybe better for us that are frustrated in those instances to know how to direct our frustration, how to deal with it. Anyway, I'll stop now.
I
No.
know several examples. I mean, yeah, there are a lot, because one of them, well, I heard firsthand from Tom Monson. Um, for those of you who don't know, I was actually forced to resign a job I had with church security in 1983, because I had published some things in the Seventh East Press, which was an off-campus newspaper at BYU at the time. And so I was forced to resign. So to make a long story short, Tom Monson calls me in. That happened in April. Tom Monson calls me into his office in November of 83. And he came right out and told me that when Dean Jesse's book came out, Letters from Brigham Young to his son, that they were absolutely, well, Boyke Packer was trying to suppress one of the letters, which is where Brigham Young tells his son, who is now on a mission, that this will give you a great opportunity to give up tobacco, because it's been, a few years since I gave it up. Right? And this is Brigham Young, the Mormon prophet. Word of wisdom is way in the past at this point. And he's talking about giving up tobacco. And so they didn't want that letter in there. And Tom Monson was one of the voices who stepped in and said, if Brigham Young wrote it to his son, then it should be in there. Right? So that's an example of an apostle standing up to another apostle to get a document in. But then you have other examples. Gordon B. Hinckley with the Joseph Smith 1825 letter. That's one of the forgeries that Hoffmann created, where he bought it personally. I believe he paid $15,000 for it out of his own money. And the reason why, it's really clear when you see the whole picture, it's for plausible deniability. So that if the church got asked, have you purchased this document? They could say with a clear conscience, no, we haven't, right? Because it was a personal purchase done by Gordon B. Hinckley and not something that was actually officially done by the church. And so there are examples of that throughout the years that I've seen. But now with the new openness, we can do nothing but applaud what these folks are doing, because this is unlike anything I have ever seen in the history of this church with the openness of historical records. I have never seen anything like this. And so I have nothing but an enthusiastic, response to it. I mean, it was just a few years ago that, I was banned from the church history department right after the bombings occurred. And that ban was only lifted a few years ago. And it was lifted when I was actually asked by one of the members of the Joseph Smith Papers Project, my wife and I, to come and visit his office in the historical department. So we went, and while I was there, I thought, well, I'm going to try this and see what happens. And I actually went in and requested to see the original Book of Abraham manuscripts, the originals, not photocopies, photos, anything else. I wanted to see the actual documents. Well, after I'd been there for a little bit, a security guard comes over and says, Brother Metcalfe, we have a bit of a problem. It looks like your name has been flagged. So then they go away and they're talking on their microphone, and they talk to one of the head guys of the department who can see me on camera while I'm there. And he knows who I am because we work together. And then the security guard comes back over and says, Brother Metcalfe, Brother so-and-so says to you that we feel enough water is under the bridge by now, and you're free to see whatever you'd like. And so that was where I had my Moses on the Mount moment, where they brought down from the archives the original Book of Abraham manuscripts. And I was sitting there examining them right in front of me. I had a jeweler's loop the whole bit so that I could, zoom on every detail of the ink and all of that. That is unprecedented. Even during the so-called Camelot era, during Leonard J. Arrington, that would never have happened. But it's happened now, and it continues to happen. And so we should applaud this. I encourage it. Even if I see flaws in the system from time to time, I still encourage it. Keep moving forward. Don't stop this, and I think that my friends at the Joseph Smith papers, of which I have many, are doing an amazing job. And I have every bit of confidence in their scholarship.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think the Joseph Smith Papers project has brought us light years ahead, and the kind of scholarship we're seeing is amazing. And there's a lot of spin-offs. It's not just through that project. There are scholars who are publishing at academic presses all over the country. And I think the new young scholar has a whole different notion of how things work. And I don't think they feel intimidated as much as people in the past would. So I applaud it as well. I think we're moving forward. Sometimes the steps we take are baby steps, but nevertheless, I think we are taking steps forward.
Thank you.
Can I say something, Jay? Just
Yeah, and then right after you say that, I just would be curious because it's so rare to have Darius Gray, be able to chance to hear him. So after you, I'd like to see if Darius has anything to add from his perspective and history.
okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, Robert. Good question. It's good to see you. I just, in my experience with working with so many people who are feeling that sense of betrayal, I just will offer quickly my 2 cents, which is you don't always have to have a culprit to feel betrayed. And I see this all the time in my practice. I see it in mixed faith marriages where someone is struggling with their testimony and the other spouse feels absolutely betrayed. Like, we promised that we would be doing this thing forever. We had made covenants in the temple, and that spouse had absolutely no intention of breaking any kind of a covenant, but the other one feels horribly betrayed. And I think this happens with church history. And I don't know that people know specifically who to blame. All they know is that what they learned in seminary, what they learned in all of the correlated material that they took in growing up, and everything, especially I hear this so much from missionaries who, went out and told this very simplistic story. When they have invested 2 years of their life or 18 months of their life saying, this is the story, this is what happened, I testify. There is a huge sense of betrayal when you find out it's different. And so typically people just blame the church, not really even knowing where to direct that. I think that's true. We don't know where to direct it. But I think you can feel betrayal and not have any particular leader or instance of hiding to or intention to deceive for people to feel that sense of betrayal. All you need is their reality to be not meshing with what they heard. And I think it's compounded by no one ever coming out and actually saying, by the way, I know in the 70s and the 80s, we told a very simple story. It's all so much more messy. Like, let's get into that. I think if someone started publicly saying those kinds of things, that sense of betrayal would go way down.
You mean general authorities would start saying that?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's
I
see.
agree.
Let's see. Is Darius still here? Did he disappear?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, good.
And that's not a halo. That's
There you are.
I only wear the halos on the weekends that are opposite. Never mind.
Looks like
welcome.
you let me.
Hey, hi, friend. Good to see you. My comment is it has been so refreshing to hear this conversation. Brent, Curt, you've both done stellar work this evening. I've enjoyed it. I'm proud to know both of you, and I'm grateful that you are upon this earth and also serving God, knowingly or not. And just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Darius.
Darius.
Love you, brother.
That's wonderful, and can't wait to see you again. So
Well, you need to stick around more, brother.
yeah, and Aaron says hi as well.
Oh, hi.
Uh,
Well, I want you to know I got up after Jay mentioned and I put on a shirt. I thought about putting a necktie over my garment top, but I thought I'd go all the way.
Here, we'll take you anyway.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
good
Thank
night.
Dave, well
Night,
done.
Darius.
Jay, very well done.
Oh, thank you. You're kind. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, I'm just speaking truth, brother.
You're kind.
Thank you. Take care.
Too.
Yeah.
Too. So I want to be respectful of your time. You know, we normally go to 9. I'm happy to keep going with whoever wants to keep going here. I know Maxine wanted to ask a question and maybe others want. So first of all, Curt and Brent, I need to be very respectful of your time, and Janice. So do you three able to keep going or not?
I do charge overtime after 9, but
Exactly.
I can keep going if you want to. I'm wondering if everybody's tired of hearing us.
What do we hear here? Did anybody want to? I mean, again, you can just drop off anytime, including Janet. You just need to give me a warning so people know
I'm good. I'm good. Go ahead.
that the Zoom ends.
I'm good.
Yeah, so just feel free to drop off. Maybe we can have, just because that's a sweet place to maybe have a closing prayer for those who actually want to leave after that. And we can kind of bring this to a close and then continue. Let's see. Maxine, you want to give us a little prayer blessing thing?
Instead of a question? Okay.
Yeah, what's it?
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, the compliment is you do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Dear God, beyond all gods, and higher consciousness beyond all archetypes, we are so grateful for our existence, and we are so grateful that we are all alive at the same time on this planet, and that we have the incredible joy and blessing of knowing each other. For we know that it is only, as Brent said, through each other and through our relationships that we are sustained and able to move forward and live our lives. We ask thee to bless Brent in all of his needs and all of his plans and goals. We ask thee to bless Curt for all he has given and sacrificed for us all, as has Brent. Please bless them, be present with them, and strengthen them, for they are instruments in thy hands, instruments for good in this world. Please bless Jay for all of his incredible work, caring and ministering to all of us all these years. We are so grateful for him. And please bless Jana with all that she needs and desires and deserves right now, for all of her support and endless caring and ministering. Please stay with us, be present with us, and go with us forward in this week and this month in our lives, and help us love one another more, and remember how much we need each other and how much we affect each other. Amen.
Amen. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for those sweet words.
Great,
All right.
Maxine. What's your question, though? I'm
Yeah.
Yeah, I want your question.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's really good to see Brent and Curt. I miss you guys like hell.
Same.
like heaven. I miss you so much.
In Brent's case, hell is appropriate.
Yeah.
I miss you. They're actually two of my spiritual husbands from way back. So anyway, I have a personal question for each of you, and then a Maxine question. So I can never do just one question. And by the way, Robert's comment was great. And I have to say, some of us historians do know who to blame. But fortunately, nearly all of them are dead, which makes it easy to cast blame now. Very few are still alive, but we all inherited a mess, and the guys in charge are doing their best to deal with it. And everything Brent said about the amazing progress of the Joseph Smith papers is absolutely true. It's astonishing. So we're all working together to sort through this mess that we all inherited. So personal questions first. Curt, because you sell books written by people across the spectrum, what kinds of accusations and lack of support and criticisms do you get for supporting all kinds of research and authors across the spectrum? And then for Brent, the personal question is, maybe people don't know that your sister and brother-in-law were the first temple presidents of the Rome, Italy temple. And so you want to share something about how you support each other, they support you, and you support them in their calling. And then when you guys both answer that, I had one other question about the Hoffmann thing that I can't resist. So.
Well, I like to think that those who come into my store are there to find something that appeals to them and that they want. And we try to meet them on the ground where they are and without judgment. So, I mean, I've told people we have customers from general authorities all the way over to fundamentalist polygamists and everything in between. And we, again, try to meet them where they are and try to find something that's of value for them. And we don't really, I don't really hide anything. We just try to take care of their needs as we can. And I don't think I've had a lot of criticism. I think people come in sometimes and see things that surprise them. I mean, we're very selective about what we have in the store, especially books that are new or in print. You know, I mean, we can only stock so many, and we tend to try to have books of academic interest and historical interest, and we don't have every book that you could find at Deseret Book, obviously. But the used books are all over the place, and so we can find things for people no matter where they are along the spectrum. And once in a while, somebody will express surprise or maybe disappointment, or I've even had modern fundamentalist polygamists who see like an expose written by one of their former number and kind of look askance at that, but then ask us if we have a set of journal of discourses. So I think people probably keep most things to themselves if they have any strong feelings about what they see, and we try to be as diplomatic and as helpful as we can. I don't know if that answers that, Maxine.
It does. It's amazing how Benchmark Books all these years has achieved that balance of supporting every single person, every position across the entire Mormon spectrum, and yet nobody has shut you down.
Thank goodness.
And Maxine, could you repeat your question to me one more time?
Yeah, probably a lot of people don't know that your sister and brother-in-law were the first president, temple president and matron called for the Rome, Italy temple. And so I wanted to know if you wanted to share how you support them and they support you across that.
Absolutely. I think that the support goes both ways. For one thing, when the coronavirus hit, they got sent home, right? Because I mean, they shut down the temple, everything else. So they've only recently just gone back there. But I'll be seeing them when I'm in town in just a few days in Utah, because it's their daughter who's getting married, right? Wow. In the same sex relationship.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That's amazing.
So they're coming back from being temple president and temple matron to attend that wedding and the baptism of their grandson. And so, you know, the bottom line is this, is that they clearly have their belief systems and structures, but they also look at the broader family and everyone else, including me, right? I mean, I went from being a pariah on Mormon history to being the family consultant on Mormon history, right? Everybody comes to me now.
Right.
When I go there, I try not, there are times when I try not to make eye contact because it means a question's going to come. You know, somebody's going to say, hey, you know, I'm glad that I saw you here because I was thinking about this, you know, and so it's kind of funny that way that has been such a different shift in how the family, you know, is kind of viewing things. And so, you know, I think that that's kind of an interesting phenomenon to see how the parents have adapted, and all the siblings. I mean, this is not a small family, right? And tons of grandchildren, you know, some of whom have already been on missions and the whole bit. And so it's this whole collective. And to my knowledge, not one of them has said, oh, you know, we cannot support you no matter what. They've all said, you know, we are here for you and we want your happiness, and that's what matters. There are some that may struggle with it more than others. Don't get me wrong about that. But by and large, I think it's been a very good relationship. And I'll tell you right now, the Craig and Julie's my sister, Craig's my brother-in-law, are two of the most decent Christian people you could ever meet. You know, they would give someone the shirt off their back to help them. And I've seen them do some just amazing things. And even with my children, I mean, my two youngest children are not LDS at all. I mean, I remember driving my son to high school one day and he asked me who Joseph Smith was. And the reason why he asked me is because a friend of his was LDS. But we never talked about church history. It was just not a family topic, even though I was totally entrenched in it. It was just not a topic that was raised. We did talk about what it means to be a decent person and what it means to have empathy for others and care. You know, I mean, those were the topics we were talking about. And so now, you know, they're such just wonderful kids. And, you know, my son, who lives in Utah now, was having some medical issues. And my sister was the person, day or night, would take him anywhere to go check by a doctor. I mean, day or night, she would drop everything and just come and help him. And that's who they are, you know. For one thing, family really matters. That's at the core of our whole massive, and it's huge. I mean, when my dad died, there were, I think, either close to or just over 100 of his descendants there. That's how big my family is. It's absolutely massive.
Wow.
And like I said, the majority of them are active LDS. But all of my siblings will be attending the wedding. Most of their families will be attending the wedding, at least the ones that live in Utah. That's the difference.
Very cool.
Right? Yeah.
That's amazing. And yeah, I just couldn't resist asking about that. So that it's even more interesting than I knew. So,
Yeah.
okay, I have a quick follow-up question, not to those, but a Maxine kind of question about the Hoffmann thing. Since you've been talking about spirituality and God and different beliefs and atheism and secular humanism, and you know how you know, what different, utterly different positions of belief you've occupied over the course of your life, as have I. I can't resist asking the question about the 4 women who had very clear premonitions about Hoffmann, and what you think about that, about spiritual premonitions, because I had a very clear one when I saw him present on the Joseph Smith III paper at MHA in '82. Very clear that he was a liar and a creep and not to be trusted. And I came out of the session really upset. Ann Butters, who was Jeff Simmons' assistant, warned and warned and warned him, and he didn't believe her. Brent Ashworth's wife, you know, had the premonition, and then that saved Brent's life, perhaps. And then, of course, Dory. Dory has talked recently about the premonitions and warnings, and even a voice that warned her. So how do you make sense of that? And it's not like a rhetorical or a trick question or a mean question. It's a sincere question. Like, how do you make sense of that? Because I've struggled with that all these years. Like, why didn't I do more to warn people? Well, I tried and nobody believed me. You know what I mean? But so how do you make sense of that?
Well, first off, I think it clearly shows that women are far more intuitive than men are. But aside from that, I think that there are a lot of ways that we can view experiences that people have. And I'm not one to ever diminish or take away from those experiences. I mean, Maxine, you've shared things with me, and I don't sit there and berate you over them or go, how can you believe that nonsense? You know, and because I don't even feel the need to. Yeah. But I know that there are others who had, you know, different experiences, like Bill Hoffmann is a good example, Mark's dad, who literally had a revelation that Mark was innocent after he had been charged. And he said it was like the voice of God had spoken to him and told him that his son was innocent. And I can't imagine almost the internal smirk that Hoffmann had on his face when he confessed to it. Because I'll tell you right now, there was some real conflict between him and his dad. And I think just the idea of throwing that right in his dad's face, I think he would have got some sick pleasure from that, you know? And as disturbing and twisted as that is, I don't think he gave a damn ultimately about anyone. Everything was self-preservation for him, whether I was going to be killed by the 3rd bomb or whether Brent Ashworth was going to be killed by the 3rd bomb. It didn't matter. Yeah. We were commodities, and expendable ones at that, you know, that could be easily tossed away. I mean, he stood me up for our lunch that day. He went and tried to see Brent Ashworth, but Ashworth didn't come down. And then the 3rd bomb goes off in his car. Yeah. So I'm just saying that what people account as spiritual experiences, I think, are extraordinarily complex and unique to them. And it's up to them to make decisions about what that means, more than it is up to me to judge what that means for you.
Good answer.
Well, Maxine, I've said this before, that had a number of us been able to be in a room together to discuss things that Mark had said or done and compared notes, would have made a huge difference. And I would have loved to have had all those people that you mentioned, including yourself, say, well, this was my experience. But he was really good at isolating everybody and operating in that sphere where you only knew enough that he, you know, wanted you to know. And I remember Dory saying that she had been asleep symbolically for all those years. And if she hadn't been, she probably would have been dead. I'm not familiar with her premonition. I do remember in the documentary, she says, Mark fooled me every day. And he fooled all of us. And I just wish we could have had all those voices at the time, you know, to warn each other, but we didn't. And some of us weren't smart enough or in tune enough or whatever to see beyond what seemed obvious to us, and until it was too late. So I wish we'd had that foresight that you're talking about.
That's a really, really profound answer. Again, both of you, excellent answers. And Dory has been talking in interviews, other interviews online, about the premonitions she had, and right before, the night before she got married, including, and she chose to go ahead. But anyway, yeah, that's the other thing, like Brent said, it's up to us to choose what to do with them. So thanks, you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Maxine.
Good questions, Max.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.
Love you both.
Thanks.
Love you and miss you, Maxine.
Yeah, miss you more than words.
Yeah. Well, next time we're in town, when it's not so crammed in, and we're trying to see family that we haven't seen in
It's fine,
over
don't worry.
3 years.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to cram everything in that we can, but we're going to try and get back there by the end of the year. And Erin was just waving frantically to say hi.
Tell her I love her and miss her. And no explanation, no worries. I'm so happy that you are able to make this trip, Brent. I'm cheering for you. I'm thrilled. Uh-oh, somebody's got a hold of her.
That's
we have
great. That's better than listening to my dogs.
Well, you guys, should we call it a night, or is there any one last just pressing thing that someone needs to ask to help them move on in their life better?
I appreciate everyone's patience and those who have stuck with us. I hope they've enjoyed this. I've certainly enjoyed it a lot.
So have I.
As have I, and I apologize. Sometimes I can be long-winded, and
what
I try. I know I try and keep it short, but sometimes I fail, and I fail miserably. So thank you for your patience.
You're great.
It's been a lovely evening. Thank you, all of you who have attended have helped, make it so good too. So thank you for being here as always.
Thanks for the invitation, Jay. And
yeah, thank you, Jay.
And Jana, thank you for all you've done too.
Absolutely, Jana. Thank you.
Yep, I appreciate it. So next month, I'm going to try a combination of Zoom and in person, back to in person again. So hopefully I can figure out, I'm going to talk to you, Jana, about how we can maybe make that work, because it's really nice to have people from out of town here, Robert and other people. So yeah, and Brian ready. Anyway, thanks to all of you.
Hey, thanks so much.
Good night, all.
Bless you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.